Welcome back, everyone. In this video, let's actually migrate out what we have left inside of this component, which is the card list. So let's uncomment out that part of our code and put this in. And here what we need is filtered monsters. In order to get the filtered monsters, let's think about what we need inside of this part of the code, which was our old class component that actually returned us the filtered monsters. What we need here is we need a monsters to filter from. And this monsters before was inside of our state, which was initialized as an empty array. So let's do that first. Let's first initialize a new state, so const monsters, and then set monsters. Remember, it's the value and then the setter value. And I'm going to say use state, and I'm going to pass it the initial value, which is an empty array. Now that we have this, what we need now is to figure out how to actually get the values from JSON placeholder into this app component. What we had before is that we had this component did mount call. Component did mount is some lifecycle method, as we know, that fires only when the component mounts. That's the only time when you need to fetch this initial data. After that, we don't need to ever fetch it again. But this might pose a problem for us, because let's just look at if we copied this fetch, and let's comment this out back again. And let's just say put this inside of our application. If we just made this fetch call, and what we did is right here, instead of set state, we said set monsters. And instead of passing in a function, we can just pass in the value that we want the monsters to be set to. So which is our users. Now, before I save this, and before you save this, what I want you to do is I want you to also add a console.log render. Remember, I'm trying to show you that this is not the way that you want to actually fetch. There are a couple weird things that are going to happen, and we're going to dive deep into why that happens. So if you save this fetch now, and you go to your application, let's refresh. What are we going to see? We see the render call. We do see our content, but notice how this render is constantly firing over and over and over and over and over again. Why does it keep doing this? Well, this actually has to do with the way that functional components work. So what you're going to have to do in order to break this is you're going to have to go into your Windows and go down into your task manager, open this, find your application right here, and end this process. Only by doing that do you prevent the stack from continually recalling. So why did that happen? What do we know about our functional components? Whenever the state updates, if there's a different value for the state value as there was in the previous state, then it will re-render, and to re-render, we need to run this entire functional component top to bottom again. Fetch is fetching from some foreign API some specific value. In our particular case, it is the users array. This array, because it comes from outside of our browser, is going to give us an array that is different in memory than the one that we have stored. Even if the values inside of this array is the exact same, because we know we get the same 10 user objects back in this array every time we call this API URL. But because it comes from outside of our browser, it is a different array in memory. Every time this check happens, our set monsters is seeing that this users array is a different one in memory. So the equality check fails, meaning that React thinks it's going to be a different array, which it is. It's a different array, even if the values inside are the same. Remember, it's not about the values in the array. It's about whether or not that array points to the same reference in memory. And every time this happens, it is a different array in memory. So as a result, what happens is that every single time this set monsters is getting called, it is re-rendering this entire function. And this function, as I told you, with all JavaScript functions, will run through every single line. It cannot just isolate one part of this function. It has to run every line in the function. So it's going to refetch every single time, which puts us in a circular loop. We are going to re-render. In turn, we are going to fetch again, get a new set of users, and then update the state. State is updated, React re-renders this function, fetches again, gets different users, sets monsters, and then reruns. And now we're stuck in this loop where we're just constantly refetching over and over and over and over again. And that is why this is happening. As a result, what we need to do is we need to stop fetching somehow inside of this functional component every time. And the way we do that is actually using side effects. Side effects can be generated from functional components using the useEffect hook. If you remember, a side effect is some behavior that we trigger from our functions that affects something that exists outside of the scope of the function. It's either that we modify or we rely on some value that exists outside of what's within scope of our functional component. In this particular case, any fetch call is a side effect, so we need to use the useEffect hook. And this hook is a little complicated. But right now, before we move on to utilizing this useEffect hook, I want you to really understand this specific thing that happened in our functional component. It's incredibly important because through this will you actually understand how functional components really work and how React determines using functional components that it needs to re-render. So remember, functional components, anytime it renders or re-renders, runs the code inside of this function top to bottom every single time. So if you have some weird bug whenever you're coding out React components and you notice that you're stuck in a render loop, think about what's happening. Think about all the steps with re-rendering. Think about the fact that this function runs top to bottom. Look at the variables in your state. Are they different variables or are they the same variables? These are very important things to really know about when it comes to React and coding at this level with React. React has come a long way, and as a result, you have to really have solid foundational understanding of JavaScript in order to properly code React components and understand how to optimize your React code. But now that we understand what's happening inside of app and why we were stuck in that infinite re-render loop, let's move on to utilizing useEffect hook to get around this issue. I'll see you in the next video.